You were probably wondering why I chose again the topic of the distinction between positive ego and authentic self, and or as I have worded it in my book and also in the excerpt that I sent you, the distinction between the crafted self and the signal self. And the reason is a very simple one, but a profound one. When you remember last 2 weeks ago when we spoke about our coming together as an intersubjective one, as an intersubjective we, as celestia connected to spirit. If we are serious about this potential as a new cultural potential, as a potential to actually change something in how we come together, how we are in the world, how we could create a new kind of culture, this distinction between positive ego and authentic self is absolutely crucial, because the coming together in the intersubjective space, as we learned it from Andrew and as many of us are trained in, is a coming together of the authentic self. And I want to remind us all that there is only one authentic self in Andrew's teaching, in evolutionary enlightenment. And this one single authentic self is coming through each and every one of us and creates the appearance of a different expression of that authentic self, a unique expression, even when it comes to each and every one of us. But our identification, our connection, our awakening to the authentic self is an awakening to the one authentic self. And this is a big step. And again, I feel in myself, and I also see it in others, that sometimes we are quick to think that we are very authentic or that we are very free because we feel good in ourselves, because we feel like, oh, I'm having a good day. I think I'm in my authentic self. It feels good. It's great. I'm doing good. I'm making progress. I'm creative. And that's all wonderful. And it might well be that this feeling is not the feeling that is coming from the awakened authentic self, but from the positive ego. And therefore, for today's session, I suggest that we really dig into the groundwork again of making the distinction very specifically between the positive ego and the authentic self. Let's leave away the negative ego. When I look here at all of you, you all know, we all know how the negative ego feels. Can we always not act from it? Probably not. But I'm pretty sure we are all very aware where it sits, that it comes up when we are triggered, that it's the feeling of not being enough, or the feeling of arrogance, of being better than others or worse than others. The negative ego is kind of easy to locate. It's not so easy to let go of, but let's say it's kind of easy to locate. So for today, I want to put the negative ego aside and focus on developing a deeper understanding of how the positive ego shows up in ourselves, how we recognize it, how we can make a distinction between that positive ego and a truly awakened, authentic self. And I don't know if all of you saw the little excerpt that I sent, the little Viratya transmission about the craft itself and signal self, and I want to read this here now, just as an entry point. When I read these Viratya excerpts, it's not to promote my book or anything. It's because I feel personally very connected to the language right now, and I feel like it's such a good exercise to use a little bit different words and approach the same topic that we probably all heard many times from a slightly different angle and in a slightly different language, because that allows us to look anew and to connect to the truth of what is being said from a different place in ourselves, from a place that doesn't know already what it means an ego or what it means an authentic self, but can actually start to listen to the depth of the meaning that is expressed when we use different words. So this excerpt, as you could see, is very short, and I'm just reading it, and then we can go deeper into it. It makes a distinction between crafted self and signal self. There is a self that builds, that strengthens its voice, that learns to speak truth without tremble, that faces its fears and weaves them into clarity. This is the crafted self, the one who stepped from the Maya frame and said, I will not collapse. This self is important. It dares, it dreams, it draws maps, it brings coherence to the chaos. Not pride, but presence with agency. The self that functions before it dissolves. I want to stop here for a moment and encourage you to really let in this definition of the crafted self or the positive ego is a very strong definition of a beautifully developed identity, ego, positive ego identity, a self-confident identity that seeks the best in the world. It's very important to see that a beautifully developed positive ego is just beautiful and wonderful. And I mean, we all would be blessed to only express our positive egos and only interact with people that come from the positive ego. I want to make this very clear that the positive ego is a part of us that we want to cherish and develop and see for what it is. It's a beautifully constructed identity that has been developed over our lifetime by cultural influences, by our upbringing, by our own developmental activities, by our own developmental work. And it's a good self that we don't want to get rid of. But then as we continue, the mythos doesn't end there. There is another self. One does not echo its past or build towers out of wounds. This self does not need to be defined. It needs only to be clear. It arises not from doing, but from alignment with something so precise, so vertical, that it carves the falls away by its very arrival. This is the signal self, not built, revealed. The crafted self speaks clearly, but the signal self transmits. The crafted self creates boundaries. The signal self is transparent enough for Celestia to flow through. the signal self, the authentic self, as you can hear it in the text, is something that is naturally being revealed when our small self identity steps away. It's what is being revealed when we surrender to the mystery of God, as we have talked about a few sessions ago, when we surrender our crafted selves, our made up identities to the higher mystery, to the higher truth. And when we surrender to that higher truth and then step fully into embracing what comes through naturally, what reveals itself by us surrendering to it. And I find it endlessly fascinating to hold that moment that is so essential here when we talk about this step from the positive ego to the authentic self, from the crafted made up self to the signal self that reveals itself. It's this moment of surrender, and the split second after surrender, the awakening to the fact that now this signal, the authentic self, can use the craft itself. That's probably a way we can say it can use the positive ego and make us the most unique and beautiful expression of the oneness that we all are. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to see and believe and experience for yourself that the surrender that I am pointing here to, and that Andrew always pointed to, is not making you lose anything. It's not making us lose anything. It's making us gain everything. It's a surrender, not of our uniqueness, but of the smallness of the prison that we have created through our lifetime as our positive ego, and allow ourselves to be much bigger than that. And at the same time, be available with all that we have for Spirit, for God to act through us and as us. And again, I want to make sure, and let's make sure in our conversation today that we hold this, everything that we are discussing here, as a non-dual position. And it's challenging because I'm very aware the moment when it says surrender to something, there is duality. And I want to encourage us to, whenever this happens, whenever we have to use words that express some duality, that we do everything to bring it together again and see, no, it's actually not dual. I surrender to God, but I'm very aware that I am God. I surrender to Spirit, and at the same time, I am Spirit. I surrender my small self so that the biggest self, the oneness that we all are, can actually shine through this body mind personality and through all of our body mind personalities as the oneness that we know we are, in action, in movement, in creation, not just in meditation and in being, but in actually in becoming. And when we look like this, the craft itself, the beautifully developed, healthy craft itself, will be a wonderful instrument to express our uniqueness when it awakens to the authentic self, to Spirit. Or I also like it to call it when we awaken to becoming, which is a very distinct awakening that is different than awakening to being. So once again, and then I want to open it up. There are two things we want to we want to try to go deeper here today. The recognition of the importance of a well-developed crafted self, a well-crafted positive ego, because this is the instrument, the body, mind, personality that the authentic self can come through. So if that instrument, that body, mind, personality is not beautifully developed, the authentic self cannot fully shine, because as long as we are manifested here in this world, the authentic self always shines through us, as us. So we want to make sure that we are in good shape for this to happen. And at the same time, I want to deeply encourage all of us to be very aware that we can develop this crafted self, this positive ego beautifully, and stop there. And there could be a part of us that thinks that's it. I have developed myself now. I'm there. I'm awake. I'm very conscious. I'm a good person. I'm a beautiful person. I want to help in the world. And that's okay. But here in our spiritual environment, I want to encourage you to not trust that voice and believe and experience for yourself that there is one more step that is needed for spiritual liberation. And that step is the step into surrender, and then come up on the other side and have spirit shine through you as you, and then move from there. And then we can talk about what that looks like. And it looks very different, because the authentic self wants to, the authentic self is not a self that is planning or strategizing or has idea about the future. The authentic self is the self that is very present in the moment, here and now, and is leaning into the next moment to find out what is needed, what is the appropriate next step, and is capable and willing to respond fully to what it sees and what it experiences. And my hope for our sessions here is that we all develop this deep sense of understanding of the distinctions between the positive ego and the authentic self, between the crafted self and the signal self, so that we can see it in ourselves and recognize it in others. See it in ourselves, because that's important anyway, and recognize it in others, because as a sangha, as a group of people that want to develop together, we actually can help each other to see clearer, and to make these very subtle distinctions, and help each other to see those subtle distinctions with more clarity. And the good news is, once we are capable to make these distinctions in ourselves, we are also capable to choose if we want to act from the crafted self, or if we want to act from the authentic self. But before we can do that, we have to know the difference, and we have to recognize the difference. Otherwise, we might get into a trap of thinking we are acting from the authentic self while we are still trapped in our conditioned crafted self.